Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Royal Nerd Gaming. I am your host, the Royal Nerd, and we're getting back to ranking every variant in Marvel Snap. But this week, we're gonna shake things up a little bit. A few days ago, I made my first ever community post, so that was exciting. And it was a poll asking people whether they thought I should continue going through the cards in cost order, or if I should prioritize new releases. Maybe even make full videos dedicated just to the variants being released in a given season. However, many people were quick to point out that new cards aren't really being released with that many variants anymore. I mean, there are multiple cards coming out this season with only one variant outside of the base card. The vote also reflected that people were mostly satisfied with continuing in cost order. So that's that, right? Well, not exactly. You see, even if I'm not going to be doing full videos on newly released variants, I wanted to find some way to include the cards being released each week. Talking about a newly released card helps make a video more topical and relevant, and then hopefully more people will find it. Also, I'm the kind of player that wants to have at least one cool variant for as many cards as I can. Knowing what variants a card releases with helps me determine which variants I want to target. Are there Spotlight Cash variants that I like enough to gamble my caches on, or should I save my keys and just pick up a cool variant that's going to roll through the shop later? These are the questions that I'm trying to answer for myself every week. And if any of you out there are also as methodical as I am when it comes to considering which variants to get, then hopefully you'll like my new system. From here on out, each week I will be ranking the variants of the card or cards that came out that week, plus 1 to 2 older cards in cost order. Furthermore, instead of making 30+ minute gigantic videos covering 30 to 40 variants, I'll be aiming to make 10 to 15 minute videos covering half as many variants. That way I can get out a tier list video every week instead of every 2 to 3 weeks. So let's try out this new format for this season, and if by the end of it you guys decide that you like the old format with the longer videos and no new cards, then we'll go back to that. But now, with all that out of the way, let's take a look at the new season pass card, Baron Zemo. Now, Baron Zemo's base card here is like quintessential base card. I mean, it doesn't get much more basic than this, but that's not a bad thing. When I think of just card games in general, I think of cards like this. The character just standing there, on display, nothing fancy, nothing flashy. The orangey hue of the background offers a nice contrast against his dark black leather outfit, and that purple mask that he's known for that's so simple yet so intimidating. We've even got a little bit of personality with him doing that iconic bad guy thing of pulling a glove down your arm further than it needs to go so it'll snap back up threateningly. Classic stuff. This feels like what a base card should be. Basic, yet functional. So it's gonna get a B tier. So Victor Faro's actually the artist who's being showcased this month. Like, he made this variant that you get at the end of the season pass, and he also designed all of the variants that are available with the new cards in the Spotlight caches throughout the month. And I gotta say, I love his work. The sort of smudgy oil paint aesthetic is so unique, and it makes the characters feel big, important, and powerful. Who got oil paintings done of them? Important people in history, you know? That's what it feels like. Not that we're looking at a card of Baron Zemo, but rather a portrait that was made to capture his image. The way that the fire looks in this art style is breathtaking. I mean, it looks real. It captures the essence of fire. It doesn't look drawn in. It looks random and sporadic and violent, and provides an excellent contrast for Zemo, both visually and in terms of his character. I mean, he's not random, he's not violent, he's calculating. He's calm, cool, and collected, even with an inferno raging behind him. This guy is always in control. Even in this medium, like, you can really appreciate all of the creases of his clothes, which is just detail that I didn't expect out of this sort of style. And then you notice his, like, crown around his mask, glimmering in the light. Like, his clothes seem to be more dark and gritty, like he's a guy who's not afraid to get his hands dirty. And then you look up and you see that he's actually kind of regal. He's in charge. This is a guy who deserves your respect. It's a really stunning variant, but it's not my favorite Zemo variant, so I'm gonna give it a high A tier. This is my favorite variant for Zemo. I love that it's so visually bright and yet thematically dark. That's a really impressive balance to hit. Just look at the background. I mean, it's day, the sun is shining down, reflecting off the icy mountains, but then in the foreground, it feels darker than it is, even though Zemo is still wearing light purple and shiny gold, looking more regal than ever actually, with his fur-lined collar. He's dressed for the weather, I guess, which is good. I wouldn't want him to get chilly. But by making his colors just a little bit darker and a little bit faded, in combination with him looking longingly over this gravestone as his tattered cape flies in the wind, the whole thing suddenly feels solemn. And then there's the fact that he's clutching onto Captain America's torn mask. Like, did he defeat Cap in battle? Or did he have something to do with getting him killed? Were they allies when Cap died? It's unclear, but even though Zemo's an antagonist, you can feel that he had respect for Captain America, and that gives him and the whole variant so much depth. Basically what I'm saying is this variant makes me feel all sorts of complicated emotions, and it also looks really, really pretty. So it's an S tier. And those are all the variants we've got for Zemo right now. I'm sure more will be coming out in the next few months, and if they do, rest assured we will cover Zemo again once we get to him in cost order and start going through the 3 costs. But for now, let's move on to the other new card that came out this week, Red Hulk. With this new format, the starts of seasons might be a little strange because I'll be covering 2 new releases and maybe only 1 older card, but don't worry, most weeks it'll be 1 new card and multiple older cards, so we'll get back into the swing of things as of next week. Now, Red Hulk's base card here is kinda underwhelming, I think, even for a base card. Like, it does what I need it to do, it shows me Red Hulk, but I feel like for the big and strong characters, that's more straightforward than it is for some of the other ones. So if all you gotta do is show me that he's big and muscly, and also red, then the background should be more interesting, or the setting should be doing more for me. Instead, he's just climbing up some rubble, and the background's just blue. Just blue. Kind of like a smoky blue, I guess, but it's not interesting. And yeah, it provides a nice enough contrast against his red, but I also don't love this shade of red they've chosen for him. I feel like it should be more vibrant, more eye-catching, which is usually pretty easy to do with the color red, but he just feels kind of flat. I look at this and my eyes go to the text first because that's bright, that's vibrant. It feels like he's not the focus of his own card. Although, everything else aside, credit where credit's due. His nail polish is on point. I mean, just look at his nails. They're like black and glossy even. I'm pretty sure Hulk's nails are just a different shade of green when he transforms. You'd think his would just be a different shade of red, but no, this guy's definitely rocking a manicure. Unfortunately, Red Hulk's excellent nail care isn't enough to change my opinion on the card, so I'm gonna give this one a C tier. And here we have the Venomized Rider variant of Red Hulk, which I guess is Venom plus the Spirit of Vengeance plus Red Hulk, and can I just say, that's too many things. Like, at some point, it feels like it just starts to lose its meaning. Oh, he's Venom, and also Ghost Rider, and also the Hulk, and let's give him Wolverine's adamantium claws, and Captain America's shield, and Iron Man's armor, and what are we doing? You know, I'm already not the biggest fan of just making every character venomized or turning everyone possible into Ghost Rider unless there's a point to it or they look really, really cool enough to justify it. This one doesn't justify it for me. It's way too busy. How could it not be? There's so much going on. You gotta get the bike in there, on fire, make it big enough for Red Hulk, and then give him the flaming, fiery skull that is iconic for Ghost Rider. And at that point, I barely noticed the red details or the black spikes of the Venomized suit. Like, you could tell me this was just a Red Hulk Ghost Rider variant, and I'd totally believe you. That being said, you could show me this variant without Red Hulk's name being there, and I don't know if I could tell you who it is. He doesn't feel like he stands out enough for me to even appreciate the details. His primary color scheme is black and orange, and the bike is black and orange, and the smoke billowing behind him is black with some orange. You see what I mean? It all just kind of blurs together for me. Maybe it's just me, but I feel like the concepts here clash more than they elevate each other. But that being said, it's still more visually interesting than the base card, so I'm gonna give it a B tier. Now, Victor Faro's Red Hulk here that you can get out of the Spotlight cache is exactly what I wanted out of a Red Hulk variant. We've got that beautiful fiery sort of background again that lets the character stand out so nicely. But unlike Baron Zemo, Red Hulk isn't calm, he's angry, he's roaring loudly, and his features appear almost monstrous in his anger. This angle, sort of like looking up at him, makes him feel like he's huge and looming, and he should feel huge. He's ginormous, right? But it doesn't exaggerate any of his proportions to accomplish that. Like, I felt like the base card did that a little bit, just adding more and more muscles to increase his size. Here, it feels natural, and yet also like he's gigantic. And this shade of red that Victor Faro has used is exactly what I was thinking. It's bright and bold, it's eye-catching, and it makes me think of the color of blood, like he's soaked in the blood of his enemies. This is the best Red Hulk variant, and it's definitely an S tier, which means I'm gonna have to save up some spotlight keys if I want to get my hands on it. Now, like I said, we'll only be looking at one older card today since we had 2 new releases to cover, but that card is Nebula, who has 9 or 10 variants, I think, so we still got some work to do. Nebula's base card is pretty simple, but very effective. It tells you everything you need to know about her at a glance. What do you need to know about Nebula? She's from space, she's a cyborg, and she's proficient with weapons. Well, I can see from the background that we're in space. I can see from her robotic arm sparking concerningly and the metal wrapping around her eye that she's a cyborg, and she's got a pretty nasty looking ray gun that I'm gonna assume she knows how to use. Not only have they made great use of the space that they have, filling both the background and foreground with lots of little details that I can appreciate, but it's also really nicely colored. I mean, the purple of her jumpsuit is so bright and vibrant, it's eye-catching, it stands out so nicely, and it works really well with the sort of chrome blue and purple of her skin. You look closer and realize she's more robotic than you thought at first. There's a lot to appreciate from this base card, so it's gonna get itself an A tier. And on the other hand, you've got Pixel Nebula. I can't begin to fathom why they made the background such a similar shade of blue to her skin tone. You never seen someone wear a green shirt in front of a green screen? It doesn't work. You lose them into the background. Except instead of happening from the neck down, it's happening from the neck up here. Her outfit is a really nice shade of red that stands out really well, but I feel like we could have accomplished that with any other color for the background that didn't mean we lost her head along with it. I feel like the face should kind of be the star of the show. And it's a shame too, because this is actually a pretty nice pixel variant when it comes to details and posing. Like, it's not overcomplicated what she's doing. She's running to the side and shooting backwards. I appreciate the little details like her robotic eye and her metal arm, but it just doesn't make up for the very poor color choices here. This pixel had the potential to be rated higher, but unfortunately, it's just another C tier. The Bartel Nebula variant is wild, because it's capturing that moment when Thanos keeps her suspended in the air as he takes her apart piece by piece as a method of torture. It's horrific, truly, but it's captured here in beautiful colors, so I'm really conflicted on the matter. The overall robotic and mechanical nature of the card, mixed with the neon color scheme, those bright oranges and pinks mixed with light purples and reds, overall gives the thing a very futuristic and alien sort of feel to it. And then your eye is drawn to look at the only part of the card that is illuminated and colored differently, and that's her face. Unlike the pixel variant, and even with all this stuff going on around her, her face is the focal point. It stands out more than anything. You want to just look her in the eyes, or the one visible eye. It feels like her face is in the foreground and everything else just falls away behind it. I think the colors here, more than anything else, really make this variant stand out. And I love a variant that stands out. So it's gonna get an S tier. Baby Nebula here is pretty fun. I like that they've gone for just a plain black background to depict space. It's effective and lets everything else stand out really nicely, and they've taken full advantage of that by making everything else such nice, bright, fun colors. I mean, the planets look like toy marbles or something, and Nebula herself looks psychotic, like she's having way too much fun blasting that little laser cannon, and I love that the spaceship that Nebula's flying isn't protected from the atmosphere at all. Does she need oxygen? She must, right? It's so stupid, but like in a fun way. You guys know the baby variants aren't usually my style, and this one isn't my favorite or anything, but it's got enough fun elements and energy that I'm gonna give it a B tier. Now I want you to prepare yourselves, because what I say next may shock you. I don't really like this Dan Hip variant. I know. I can't believe it myself, but I don't know, it doesn't have the same charm that some of his other ones do. Let's break it down, shall we? Starting with the background. I usually love Dan Hipp's backgrounds. They let the characters stand out so nicely, and he uses such bright, vibrant colors. But these colors aren't bright or vibrant, they're kinda washed out. And they don't let Nebula stand out that nicely, because it's a cool color. Nebula's whole thing is cool colors. She's not gonna stand out well against that. And one of the things I love about Dan Hipp is his ability to simplify a character's most essential traits, but I feel like we haven't accomplished that here. What did we say we need to know about Nebula? She's from space, she's a cyborg, and she's weapon proficient. Well, she's pretty clearly weapon proficient here, with the double swords ready to go, but she's not evidently in space or anywhere space-themed, which she doesn't have to be, but I already feel like the background is kind of underwhelming, so why not make it space-themed? It would feel more fitting. And as for depicting that she's a cyborg, well, I wouldn't have been able to tell you that her left arm is robotic here if I hadn't already known. And even the metal plate on the side of her face isn't really that visually distinct. Like, I feel like her robotic pieces should stand out, all metallic and shiny and silver, but here they just kind of blend in. And I should never be worried about things blending in a Dan Hipp variant. That's what I love about them, how much they pop, how they stand out. But this one doesn't really stand out. Also, someone in a video once pointed out that the shadow underneath her chin is weirdly spiky and kind of makes it look like she's got a beard. So, I can't unsee that, and now you can't either. You're welcome. So this is gonna be our first Dan Hipp variant in C tier. Listen, he's made like definitely over 100 variants, right? Like, they can't all be winners. Alright, moving right along to Chibi Nebula, and I'm torn again between not usually loving chibi variants and absolutely adoring Rianne Gonzalez's art style. I think she's won me over again. This is adorable. It's adorable. And she looks like she'd kill me for saying so, but it's true. Space being depicted not as dark, but rather as bright and full of pastel colors and planets with curvy rainbows instead of rings around them. Ugh, it's so cute. It's frustratingly cute. The colors of Nebula's jumpsuit are darker than everything else and draw all your attention right to her. And they're just like really satisfying to look at, like that deep blue and red that matches the pattern of her face with the chrome blue and purple. Her robotic arm and metallic faceplate seem shiny and distinct, like you can even kind of see the rainbow reflecting in the side of her face. Oh my goodness. Listen, it's adorable. It's got such pretty colors. I gotta give it an A tier. Now, Winter Vacation Nebula is fine. It's fun. I like that her robotic arm is kind of sculpting the ice cannon that she's using, but overall, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of detail here, and the colors feel kind of flat. I don't love that she's wearing a big, heavy parka that kind of covers up a lot of her outfit, although I do appreciate that she's cut off one of the sleeves for her robotic arm. But also everything kind of blends into the sky. It's like light blue and purple, and she's light blue and purple. It definitely doesn't live up to the standard of Sunspot's Winter Vacation variant, which I consider to be the best Winter Vacation variant. This one, on the other hand, feels pretty average, so I'm gonna give it a B tier. Yep, this is exactly how I feel looking at this variant. If you thought Bartel's was bad, this one makes it look like she's literally being pulled apart at the seams. Oh my god. It looks awful, and yet beautiful, done in Peach Momoko's art style. It's hauntingly beautiful, that's what it is. Horrific, yet stunning. I wanna look away, but I can't. Everything feels like it's just falling apart around her and taking her with it. And Peach Momoko proves that you don't need to use exclusively dark coloring to make something feel dark. I mean, her jumpsuit is the prettiest pink I've ever seen, and you can still appreciate the blue and purple striping of her face, but the watercolor aesthetic lets it all feel a little bit more washed out, kind of like it's fading away with the rest of her. I think Hauntingly Beautiful was the perfect way to describe this variant. It's an S tier. Whoa, now, this is a much darker color scheme than any of the previous variants, and feels especially jarring after having just been looking at Peach Momoko's. I mean, most of what we've seen is her with the sort of chrome, metallic, light blue and purple colored skin. Here it's a very dark purple and a very dark blue, but I think it still works. Same thing with her jumpsuit, it's less bright pink and more burnt orange. The background is abstract and blurry and fun colors, but also not really anything, but that's alright because there's so much detail to appreciate in the foreground. Just look at her robotic arm. It feels so much more detailed here than in any other depiction, especially as she's trying to fix it all by herself, tools in her mouth and some of them just sticking out of there. You can really appreciate the individual lights and wires and nuts and bolts. Not only do the robotic parts of her feel distinct, but each individual piece of the robotic parts of her feel distinct, and that's really impressive. This one doesn't quite exceed Bartel's or Peach Momoko's for me, but it's definitely a high A tier. And that's gonna be it for today. I know, it feels weird. There's still so much tier list left, but don't worry, we're going to be picking up this same tier list and filling it out next week. So if you want to see the tier list completed, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss when the next part comes out. And hopefully, I'll see you then. Thank you guys so much for watching, and don't forget to tell me what your favorite or least favorite variant of the day was in the comments. Bye bye for now, everyone. Have a nice day.